welcome to another Careers Month edition of Find Your Future. Today we are very lucky to have GHD Group with us in the studio. I would like to warmly welcome Jennifer Chalmers, the People Business Partner at GHD Group, and Brad Hamilton, the Townsville Regional Leader. GHD Group are a wonderful community partner of Ryan, and they help us almost every school holidays in terms of work experience. So we are really, really happy to see them in the studio today and have a chat with them. So welcome, Jennifer and Brad.
Thank you for having us.
I suppose, like with every person we have who comes into the Find Your Future podcast, we have a little bit of a chat first about just who you are, where you went with your careers, what's part of that history where you started out, just so that our listeners can understand and realise that we all do go down a varied path as we work through our careers. So for the both of you, so Jennifer, we might start with you. Yeah. Can you both just explain your current role at GHD Group?
So I'm a people business partner. I look after all of the HR aspects, human resources aspects of people's employment. So everything from onboarding and starting as an employee of GHD, also any performance and career development and all sorts of things, changes, restructures, anything to do with how our people operate in the workforce.
And obviously people, they're a very big component of any business or organisation, aren't they?
Absolutely, most important resource ever.
And Brad, what about you?
I'm the regional leader for Townsville as my sort of primary day job. So that covers all of our staff and our clients that live in the Townsville out to sort of Mount Isa corridor. That's our base. And then my secondary role is I'm the markets and clients lead for our transport infrastructure clients right across Northern Australia. So that's all of North Queensland and the Northern Territory. So any clients that fall into our roads and highways, ports, airports or rail, they all fall under my team from that perspective.
Sounds like a very big job with a lot of responsibility.
There's geographically, a lot of people to cover, a lot of clients, and then just very busy especially at the moment. There's so much getting, built, constructed, planned for. Lots to do, put it that way.
Tell me, what about your history for both of you? Because obviously, that's a really great explanation of where you are now in your career journey. But where did it start, and what are some landmark, I suppose, positions or industries that you've worked in along the way?
I left school unsure about what I wanted to do. So I took a year and I did a TAFE course in food and beverage services, and then I decided I wanted to do psychology at university, so I did psychology at JCU. At the end, I wasn't sure I was ready to go into, sitting in an office with somebody doing counselling or psychology. So I really enjoyed organisational development as a subject in my last year of university. So I went into HR and pretty much been there ever since. My first job was at Sun Metals, working in the HR team there. So Sun Metals was relatively new at that stage. I won't give away how long it's been since I worked there, but so it was a lot about training and development for employees. I learnt about metalliferous mining, which is the certificate course that they do there, assuming they still do it, and bobcats and gantry cranes and things like that. So it was a very industrial type environment. I then moved into Catholic education and worked there for a couple of years and learnt all about teaching and all of the schools across the Townsville diocese, and then moved into Energy Queensland, well, what was then called Ergon Energy, but the electricity supplier. So I worked there for quite a number of years before I started with GHD.
I'm sitting here thinking I've known you over the last few years with work experience, and there are definitely parts of that I had no idea of. So again, a really great example of that variety. But I think also too the transferable skills, like, when you talk about doing that psychology degree, even though you didn't go into a position where you were a psychologist as such, you would use all of those skills in so many of those positions that you held.
Yeah, just for human behaviour, how people, people spend more time at work than they do with their family and friends. So you want to make sure that you enjoy what you do and get the most out of the work. And so I put a lot of support and effort into helping people to enjoy what they do and how they do it when they come to work. So definitely the understanding of human behaviour and things that I learnt in psychology has very much been a part of how I operate as a human resources practitioner.
And I think that sometimes that place where we start to, it casts that lens, doesn't it? So, you start in psychology and that puts a certain lens on those HR positions that you have held, from there. Yep. I'm the same. I started in social work and even now I've gone to teaching. That social work lens never goes. That's how I look at every single situation. Brad, what about you? What about when you first left school?
When I did school, I finished grade 12 and I went through the trade path. So I'm a heavy equipment fitter by trade. So that's where I started. So the engineering side of things and stuff came later in life for me. So when I left school, I sort of had two choices I was pretty keen on, was the trade path or surveying which was, I really loved technical drawing and that type of stuff. So went down the trade path, did that, and just literally worked doing that for probably up to about 10 years and worked through different roles. Got some supervisor roles, got some experience in that, and it sort of just morphed into it. It wasn't like I definitely want to be the manager one day. It's just how it sort of grew over time. I worked around a bit into different locations. I spent time, in Mackay, Toowoomba, Mount Isa, all over the place, just getting general experience and working. And then I sort of got into project management, sort of not by mistake, but it's sort of just that's what it became. So as you sort of become more senior, you start to run projects and deal with clients more and do that sort of overview and supervision. And then after a while, that turned into operational management. So I became responsible for a region, and then you got budgets and profit and losses and human resources and all these things just become part of what you do day to day. And went through that. And then eventually, as part of that, I started to do a lot more on the clients and market side, like the real leading stuff, talking to our clients, understanding their needs, matching our offerings to their needs and what they needed to do. And after a while, I just really, really enjoyed that side of the business more so than the operational delivery stuff that I'd sort of grown up with. And then, more opportunities come with that. And now I lead the market and clients team for all of that Northern Australian region. And that's what I like to do is to, a client has a problem, they don't know how to fix it, they need a consultant or an engineer to help them sort it out, and we go in and try and come up with a solution, work through it, help them get some funding, and then deliver on that project right through to making it reality. So that's where I am now, and that's probably where I'll stay, to be honest. I really like that side of the business. Yep. And it's not for everyone. Some people like the real heavy technical stuff, and that's fine, whereas I prefer to play in the front-end clients and planning and that side of the business. So.
And your history is very similar to Jennifer's, and that what you can hear coming through there is those transferable skills and also that, like you were saying, the morphing, the growth, the growing and development. Yeah. As you're moving through, you're seeing more and more opportunities where you can grow and develop in different areas.
Yeah, and for me personally, I wasn't absolutely looking for it. It's just what your career develops into over time. Like you get asked to do this project and then next month you're doing a different project or whatever it is. And, that previous one and this one are very different. You use different skills, but your baseline, underlying skill set is the same. It's just how you apply them over time. So, and as part of that, you will find through your career which part you actually enjoy in the most, and then you can follow that even deeper, and go down that passage or whatever you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I look back now, when I hear every time, we have guests who come in and we hear about these wonderful journeys that they've taken with their careers, I always feel a little bit sorry, for our grandparents, our great-grandparents and so forth, where for them that freedom really wasn't there. It really was what you left school and started doing. That is really what you were probably doing when you retired, and that they didn't feel that there was that freedom, to pivot and to change or to grow too much and develop sometimes as well. So I'm really glad that we have, moved into where we are now, where we start, it is just a starting place. That is really all it is, and then we'll see what happens from there. But take us back to secondary school for both of you. And Brad, we might start with you this time. What were you thinking, like in that sort of that 10, 11, 12 period of time, what were you sort of starting to think about in terms of that pathway? And what support did you get at school at that time?
Yeah, I had pretty good support right through. My parents were farmers, like they weren't educated as far as university style people. Dad had done a trade back in the 50s, like that's how old he was. So, I was sort of always interested in and around working with my hands, working outside, that type of thing. I wasn't the greatest student. I was pretty average, you know what I mean? I certainly knew pretty early that I probably wouldn't go down a university path. That just wasn't me at that point in time. But I had some good teachers. I did a lot of work experience. I probably had to a degree, I used to work on the farm at home as well. So that gives you some life skills and some practical hand skills and things like that. And then I just played a bit of sport. You learn a bit of, that social interaction side of things as well, which is important. It just sort of got to the point of grade 12 and I obviously followed the vocational trade, pathway. So I'd done some work experience and things like that. And I literally went out of school, started applying for jobs and was lucky enough to get an apprenticeship straight out of the gate. So that's how it worked for me. So,
did you have the opportunity in secondary to, I suppose, choose some of those more hands-on subjects that helped a little bit with that decision?
Yeah. So I don't even know how it works now, but I did the three back when I went through school. It was the vocational path was technical drawing, woodwork, and metalwork. So I did all three of those. Still did advanced maths and English. I still enjoyed maths and English and stuff like that. And the reality is that's such a key underlying skill for any, whether it's university pathway, vocational, you still need to know how to read and write and add up. Like it sounds like some old fuddy-duddy said that, but that is the reality, right? Like
definitely.
My job in engineering now is literally maths and writing all day, every day. That's what we do. So having that, good base skill set, I think allows you then to move into whatever you want to do. And for me, even though I did the vocational and I did a lot of on-the-job stuff with moving into supervision and then project management, I went back then and did a business degree externally. So that gave me a different lens as a business role across the business, because managing a business is very different to working in a business. So, when you start talking about, I can run a project that's technically based, I'm the best person to do it, is very different to managing a budget and human resources and everything else that goes on with actually running a business. So it doesn't. To the point, what you start with doesn't mean that's what you have to stay with. You just work through it and things will just fall into your lap over time if you're keen enough for it.
Yeah. No, it's interesting that it's good to hear that you had support during those years and that, those subjects and things like that were really helping, and obviously your personal experience on the farm, but it was all helping you, go onto that first pathway. Jennifer, what about you? What were you thinking in secondary school?
In secondary school, I did want to do work as a dietitian. That was what I'd put down for my option when I did work experience, and I got sent to what is now Light and Easy, but used to be called back then the Diet Factory. And
I remember that name now. Yeah.
So it was learning about nutrition and putting together meals and putting together meal packs for people in our region. So I got a casual job out of it, which was awesome, but it didn't end up being what I wanted to do longer term. So, yeah.
Now, I've heard you both talk about work experience. We obviously encourage our students to do work experience. We, explain to them that we can give them a lot of support and information and resources, but that seeing people in action, those professions and those industries in action in the real world, we can't provide that, but work experience absolutely can. And we have many students who either come back and it is one of two things. It either cements it and it stays there as an option for them, or they realise, that wasn't quite maybe what I thought it was, and it might take it off the table, and both are equally as important. You both mentioned work experience. So how much work experience did you do in school, and I suppose how important do you believe that was in helping some of those decisions?
I fundamentally did work experience every school holidays through grade 11 and 12. I'm not sure what it is now, but that was what we were encouraged to do. We had to find our own back then. There wasn't, I guess, as much support. So it was either I know somebody here or can your dad help me to talk to this person? So we had to arrange our own. I did mine in the trade sort of subjects. I tried some electrical, I tried some mechanical, then I tried fitting and turning and a few other different bits and pieces. So I sort of always knew that's what I wanted to do. And then for me, the heavy equipment was where I landed in the end. So critically important as far as I'm concerned. Like I don't think anyone should say no to any work experience, whether it's 1 day or 1 week, because you may either love it or you confirm that you don't like it, and that's okay too. Because there's nothing worse than starting a career as a trade person in my profession, and then in 6 months' time going, I really don't like this. I want to be an electrician or do something different. So there's nothing wrong with trying and not sticking with it. But that's my opinion. And even to the point that's proper work experience, I think it's really critical too for just general job experience. You know, for a lot of people, if you work at Macca's at 15 or you work at a shoe shop or you mow lawn, it doesn't matter. It teaches you so many life skills in regard to how to talk to people, how to turn up on time, how to, structure your day, and I've got to get out of bed at this time and make sure my lunch break and I got my lunch packed or whatever. It's just a lot of life admin type skills that it teaches you to commit to something, give it a try. No one says you have to do it forever, but at least it gives you a lot of those base skills as well, which are, again, very transferable into whether you're a degree qualified person, a trade person, whatever it is, it doesn't actually matter.
And it's interesting you're talking about those like part-time jobs. I was only talking to one of my classes about that during the week. We were doing a piece on like communication in the workplace. And I was saying to them that they've had so many advances, for their generation in technology that have been so wonderful, so positive. But one thing they've got to be aware of, that the need for verbal communication, it's been lessening a little bit because they use Messenger and texting and social media and things like that, when we would have to verbally go and talk to people. And I was explaining that when you leave here and when you get into the real world, that verbal communication will be an expectation in the majority of pathways, and they need to be practicing that because they do have a few little gaps in there, due to that rise in technology that maybe past generations haven't had to deal with.
I think when you finish grade 12 and you're looking for your first job, a lot of grade 12s are fundamentally even, right? They've all done English, maths, whatever pass. There's not a lot of differentiators between someone that's graduated year 12. So for me personally, I know Jen would be similar. If you're looking at a grade 12 graduate's resume and one's got some work experience on it and a bit of life skill from that perspective and one doesn't, well, we know as an employer which one we're probably going to prefer. So it's not just about marks. Yes, they're very important when you come through grade 12, but some of those other transferable skills, like you said, of how do I talk to people? I know this person's had a part-time job for a year or whatever. They know they got to turn up to work at 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock every morning. They got to work till 3. They know what that is. That goes a long way for us to actually then look at, well, that person probably fits better into our working system than someone that's never done it or never tried it.
And what's really great is hearing you giving, I suppose, some of that advice for when they are applying for jobs and things like that. Myself, the VETA program leader who works here as well, side by side with me, they're things we say. And we tell them that employers tell us this, but I think it is so much more beneficial for them to hear it from employers, because I think sometimes they probably do, think, oh, Nicole and Josie are saying that all the time, I don't know if that's true or not, but to hear it, from the horse's mouth, I think that has just so much more power to it. Jennifer, you mentioned the dietitian work experience. Was there any other work experience you did?
I actually didn't do any other work experience at high school, but I did a couple of jobs. I did my a few years worth at Macca's, which is a really great training ground. They've got a massive program that they roll out across all of their staff, so you do get really good skills in, being able to work behind the counter at McDonald's in whatever format you do it, whether you're making burgers or whether you're hanging out of the drive-through. They time everything's set the way it should be done, and so you do really get some really good skills in while you're trying to earn some money at the same time.
Yeah, and funny you say that. I was also Macca's, and one thing we learned very, very quickly was you never stood around. If you've got time to lean, you've got time to clean. Yeah, it was. You always had to be moving and doing something. It didn't matter if there was no one standing at that counter. There was plenty of jobs to be done
for sure.
And obviously, with the dietitian, that work experience obviously showed you, or maybe not. Maybe this is not for me.
Yeah, look, that would have been somewhat by design in terms of where I landed. Like I wasn't in a dietitian's office working with clients or anything like that. So I think maybe I would have chosen a different pathway if I had have. But it was still reasonably good experience, and I still got some insights into something I'd never seen and done before. So yes, I did learn. That wasn't quite where I wanted to be. So yeah.
Now, let's get on to GHD Group. Could you just give us, I suppose, a little rundown of the history of GHD Group, some of the projects, the type of work, I suppose, that you do, and what some of the projects you're involved with at the moment?
Well, I might start. So GHD is a consulting engineering company. So we've actually been around for a very long time. So the business originally started in 1928 in Melbourne, in Australia. They then expanded, and the GHD actually stands for Gordon Guttridge, Gerald Haskins and Jeffrey Davies, who were the original owners of the business. They were all consulting engineers. We look after engineering, architecture, environment, and construction services across 5 continents now. So we are worldwide. We've got 160 offices around the world.
Wow.
And about 12,000 employees. A lot of our work now is in different, disciplines. So water, energy and resources, property and buildings, environment and transportation sectors. And really the mission for GHD is to create lasting community benefit through innovative solutions and sustainable practices.
That's exactly it. So to put a more practical lens on it to know so people know what we do, I always use a couple of examples that we've done locally. So I assume just about everyone that's listening to this yourselves have heard of the Horton pipeline. So the big water pipeline from the Burdekin River through to Townsville, well, it will be when it's eventually finished. We're doing all the design for that and all of the construction support. So BMD are the contractor, they're building it, but we're doing all the engineering, all the site support, all the quality, all of those things as part of it, the environmental clearances before it. We did all that to make sure that what you're building is sustainable and we're not hurting not only environmental aspects of it, but also native title, things like that. That's all involved in it as well. So that's sort of like more of an engineering water project. A building project we did, everyone's heard of Ardo. So we did the design for that, for the Ardo 5-star building. So that was something we did. We didn't build it, but we do all the engineering, the consulting, the design, the quality, all of those type of things as well. If anyone's been to the airport in the last month or two, they're doing a massive runway reconstruction there at Townsville Airport for the defence sector. So we're doing all the design for that and all the construction surveillance as part of that as a general project. So when people hear about engineering or consulting, what does it mean? That's the practical project. And we do thousands of projects, but they're the ones that people can probably go, oh, I've seen that the runway at Townsville's getting fixed. Who did that? People don't understand. That's been like 2.5 years in planning before they build it, and it's only like a quarter way done already. So, I think it's about $150 million they're spending there. So like huge projects, but puts a practical lens on what we do day in, day out.
Definitely. And I think, with that type of question, it's such a simple question, but it has such meaning behind it because, often you might see a name, see an office, have a sort of a little bit of an idea of, I'd have an idea of what they do. You have no idea, no idea of how expansive you are, as a business. Like you were saying, all the different continents you're on and how many offices you have, but also then to put that practical lens on it to say, these are the sorts of projects we're doing. And again, people, that expands their mind where they're going, wow, I didn't think that they would be involved with that, or I didn't think that was part, of that sort of business. But yeah, it is. And it just gets them thinking more and more about what those opportunities are for them with possible, employment or career pathways that they want to follow. What about the different roles and professions? Because I think that's always important to talk about too. Again, people can look at a business and go, oh, that's this. But they then have no idea of all the other types of professions and I suppose positions that actually do exist in that one business. What are all the positions that GHD hold?
So we obviously have engineers of all different types. I'd say we'd start with civil engineers. So civil engineering does a lot of everything. So if you're building a building, if you're building a bridge, a dam, a roadway, you're going to be using civil engineers who are going to be working in any of those projects. We also have electrical engineers, so all of the electrical components in a building when we're building something, as well as solar farms, wind farms, all those sorts of things. We have environmental engineers. We have mechanical and process engineers as well. Not as many process engineers, particularly in our smaller region, but certainly in our larger offices there are more of those available. Pretty much most of our projects will be engineering projects. So Horton Pipeline, for example, we've got mechanical and civil engineers working on the pipeline. We also have an architecture firm within GHD, and so we have architects and designers, landscape designers, interior designers working for GHD as well. We have environmental sciences, so they do contamination and remediation type work. They also do ecology and environmental planning and assessment. So really big parts of how we do our projects is the fact that we have the resources who can come in. It can be multidisciplinary, and we have all of those people either within our region, within our office, or certainly within Australia in the business.
And of course, then, underpinning all that too, you have all your administration, like you have HR and reception and all of those as well. Yeah,
for sure. So in each office, we have a reception and administration team. They will look after the office administration. They organise morning teas for us within the office. We have meetings and things like that they'll have clients come into the office. But they also work with our teams in bid administration. So when we're putting together a proposal or a tender, they're there in the background, assembling the documentation and pulling everything into the right format and things like that.
Sounds like a real team effort.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
what I can hear coming through.
Yeah.
So what about, how do you see this profession and this industry growing in the next 5 to 10 years? What can you see coming ahead for us?
Only growth, absolutely only growth. The more we build, or the more that's required to be built, so like even simple stuff like housing, yes, we need to build more houses. Everyone hears that on the news, but it's not just building a house. That's the bit right at the end. It's like, how do we plan for the land usage? How do we plan with the city plan, with the councils or wherever it is? We've got to get water pipelines there. We've got to get sewerage there. We've got to get power there. We've got to build the roads, and then eventually you'll build the house down the track. And as part of that, that's only increasing. To be honest, it's getting harder to find enough engineers. There's less people doing engineering as a pathway directly, which that is what it is. Like, things will happen, but there's plenty of work. Specifications and quality control is getting more and more stringent all the time. There's a higher regard for safety and longevity of assets. Like, once upon a time, you could build something, might be 20 years and then you rebuild it, whereas now people want 100-year life of assets. So that brings a different level of engineering to it and what that looks like. And then just in general, the global expansion is happening just with people, right? There's more people around. So all of the other stuff, we need more roads to wherever, whether it's to Mount Isa or to Cairns or whatever. Those roads need to be improved. They need to be repaired. They need to go forward. There's more air travel. The planes are getting bigger and heavier and more people. So, we talked about the airport runway before, but what about the terminals? There's more buildings needed, which needs more toilets and more car parks and all these things. Like, all of these things require engineering to a degree. And before that, they generally require, flood studies to make sure we're not building in a flooded area, clearing environmental and heritage issues, looking at, we do things like bushfire reporting to make sure that where we build something's not going to get burnt out because there's a bit of natural parks behind it or something like that. So there's so many of these things. We did the channel widening for Townsville Port, and we had a team on that for about 3 years, like monitoring turtles and sediment and stuff like that to make sure all of that capital expansion didn't affect the environment, and that we were managing I think it's the coral spawning season or something I know nothing about, but our teams do that stuff, right? Because that's what needs to be done. So there's a lot of work there. There's a lot needs to be done, so that it's not going anywhere. It's not going to be like in 5 years' time we don't need engineers anymore. It's probably going the other way. Engineering and science is certainly something that we could do with more people in that pathway.
And I think that's why these sort of conversations are really, really important, because, again, just the amount that is being learnt by everything you're saying about those opportunities and what those positions can do and what's out there, people just wouldn't know. It's interesting you say about that decline in engineers, because I would say this is my 6th year at Ryan as the careers advisor, and I would say engineering is always probably second to healthcare. Healthcare is usually always sits number one with where our graduates will sort of tend to go. And I think a huge part of that is because there are so many, different pathways that fall under healthcare. But engineering's always been probably number 2 for us in the time that I've been here. So we always have a nice group every year who go off along that pathway. What do you think has created the decline a little bit in people being interested in that pathway?
Interested, I think everyone, there's still a heavy interest in it. I absolutely do. I think choices probably played a lot into it, as we talked about at the start. 20 years ago, engineering was sort of engineering, trade or nothing. That was, that was sort of the choices, whereas now there's far more healthcare choices, a lot more different engineering streams. IT, when I started out, IT was, you had a mobile phone and a laptop, that was it. There was not much, whereas now we're running podcasts and doing all those type of things. So I think choice has come into it. There's a lot more choice. A lot more
competition for different pathways.
Yeah, and that's the reality. But the other part is some of the things we did 25 years ago they're not really jobs anymore. People have morphed into different things. The world in everything I've talked to about all those engineering opportunities are also opportunities in construction as well. So there's a lot more construction bodies needed from that perspective. And to be honest, engineering from a if you want to become an engineer or a scientist, it is a tertiary pathway. So you have to commit to it for a 4-year period. Some people might not be able to either do that financially, or they just might not be in the right position within themselves, and they're not ready to do it at 18 years old or whatever. So they'll go and do some, just general work to start and maybe come back to it later. So I wouldn't say, in my personal opinion, there's one particular thing why engineering has declined off. It's probably a few different bits and pieces. But again, that's similar for other, science or engineering roles as well, or whether they be health, it's just different, I guess, is probably the way to put it. So.
And I wonder too, do you see many people where they have gone off and done some other things first and then they've gone to engineering? Because I know often some of our students, when they're after a trade pathway in particular, I will have a few of them who do say, look, I think somewhere down the track it probably is engineering too, but I'm going to start with my trade first, and then I'm going to have a look and have a bit of a think about it, and I might also be a little bit more ready for uni in a few years' time. But I think I'm going to go this first. But there's something, maybe in the future for engineering.
Yeah, I definitely think that's definitely a pathway, and Jen can talk to it more than me. But we have a lot of people that start in our drafting and design teams through that associate pathway. So they, they're on the job, they're working, they do either TAFE or some uni work, but they're not full-time committed for 4 years. And then maybe in 4 or 5 years or whatever, they'll start to do a bit of external and eventually get to their bachelor's degree or something like that. That doesn't happen all the time, but it's certainly a different pathway, and we have had people come through that direction. And we've also had people that have come from a trade background, like a boilermaker or electrician. They've come and go, geez, I don't want to be on the tools every day out in the sun. They come in, they start in the design office and they've got a good baseline knowledge, but they're just applying it in a different direction rather than physically doing it with their hands on site. They're now in the background designing it on computers and things like that. So there's several pathways you can get into it. There's the traditional straight into it, but sort of a little bit like I did. I started with the trade and went through project management and eventually got there. So it doesn't really matter which way you go. If you want to do it, the pathway is definitely there. Yeah, definitely.
We mentioned a little bit earlier, your GHD Group are great community partners of ours in terms of work experience. For, I suppose, some students who will listen to this podcast a little later on and might be interested in some work experience, what would a bit of a day in the life be? I mean, I know you've got a wonderful program that you run with our students when they come for work experience. Can you give a little bit of an insight into what that looks like for them?
Yeah, so we've sort of worked on a plan over the last several years to build a program that takes 4 days. And what we try to do is give you a little bit of experience in each of our different groups. So you spend somewhere between 2 and 3 hours with each of our groups. So if there's one thing that you actually really don't like, that's okay, because you're only going to be there for a couple of hours. And if there's others that you would like to spend more time on and see more information about, you can do that as well. So so you come into the office, you will work in with each of the teams for a couple of hours each time. So it's usually 2 groups a day, but you'll also learn about safety and things like that on your first day as well. Some of our groups have a sort of a little activity that they've put together for students to do. So it's similar to what they might do in their work day, but also obviously not quite as hard as working on a project or involved, because you don't have that background. So we can't expect you to know all of the ins and outs of the details that they would know. So, but it certainly gives you a bit of an insight into what they do, and you get the opportunity to sit with the team, talk to them about what their pathway was, how they got into it, what they like, what they don't like. We sometimes have students come in, and if they're looking for more of that construction type field work, we don't send our students out to the field. So you will be in the office, but you will see that some of our employees do spend time out in the field. We do have people who are out working on sites, and sometimes they'll be at a desk working on a report for projects, and other times they'll be out in the field, and depending on what their field is, they might be sampling mud, for example.
And I know, look, I can honestly say every student who's come back from GHD Group for work experience has really thoroughly enjoyed it. They've really, had a great time during that week, and they know, it's often really, really cemented that decision for them. So it's been a wonderful time for them.
Yeah, I know when you're thinking about what you want to do, and you're researching through the universities, what does it look like? What does the study look like, and things like that. But it's not until you actually get into the workplace and talking to people who are actually doing that work that you really start to have a view and understand what it is they're actually working on and what it is a day in the life looks like for them. So absolutely, work experience it takes you away from your holidays because you actually have to come to work for that week, but you learn so much about things that you never probably thought you knew about, or what you thought you knew, maybe it's completely different. So
yeah, definitely. I suppose too, when we talk about the day in the life of, and that was a great little wrap up of work experience, but what about if someone's listening and they just need a little bit of insight before they come and do work experience of what does it look like if you're an engineer for the day? What does it look like if you're in that drafting and design sort of area? What would a typical day look like for those people?
Very different depending on what you do. Honestly, it is. For me, I do a lot of the clients and markets. I travel a fair bit, like physically get in planes and talk to people. I do a lot of contract work, a lot of planning type work. That's what I do. If you just said, like, for an example, a run-of-the-mill engineer, you're sort of really technically based, as in doing design and management of projects in an office setting. If you're more delivery based, you're physically on site or doing a lot of client meetings and those type of things. So really, really, really different. The scientists are the same. They have stuff in the background, more planning and that type of work. Some are on site sampling mud and water and different things like that. So that it's very different. There's a good blend for most. So you will have physical time when you're in the office, writing reports, doing up, you're going to do timesheets, all those other type of things that you got to do. But then we also have the element where, we've got to produce our own responses to quote and proposals. So when a client wants it, we don't just get given work. So we've got to bid on that work. We've got to work through that. There's contracts to negotiate sometimes, different rate cards, all that sort of stuff. There's panel arrangements, there's standing offer agreements. There's all these other bits and pieces in the background. So probably the best way to put it is that it's very different for everybody. But what there is there's a lot of choice for you to follow what you want to do. So for me personally, I was always an outdoors type of person, and I always preferred that to be where I was. I always wanted to work outside, doing the project management on site, following up on people, organising contractors, all those type of things. But equally, we have a lot of people in our business that are absolutely happy every day to sit in front of their computer, design models, work up quantity sheets, work out costings, produce drawings, do quality audits, all that type of stuff. And they're happy to do it, so they can, because they have the opportunity to do it with what we do. So it's not like, if I'm a civil engineer or a mechanical engineer or a scientist or whatever, that you're in this little niche that you can't do anything else, because even within those professions, there's so much diversity. It's like crazy, And then again, like I said, I do all clients and markets. I'm not even doing engineering anymore, but that's where I sort of started. So there's no easy answer to that one, but it's very diverse, and you can make it whatever you want it to be. That's for sure.
And I think that's the important thing, isn't it? That diversity, the variety, finding your niche, finding your area, that's the message that we want to give to students, is that you can find that.
We've got a few people even now, like it's way out of my league because I don't fully understand it, but AI is becoming a big thing. So a lot of, we've got people dedicated now who are engineers and designers and drafters that are moving into that, like to further develop that. They're writing their own bot algorithms and different things like that, like nothing to do with me. But again, that just shows that the difference of someone that started in engineering or drafting or science is now moving across, because that's, there's an opportunity. It excites them. That's what they want to do. So and we, like most businesses, are moving towards a more AI technology-based workplace. So there's an opportunity there for them to change into something else.
And I think that's really great that, that for GHD Group, looking at your staff, you want to help them to grow and develop and find those loves and those niche areas, and, providing those opportunities for them. That's what it sounds like, which that's a dream place to work, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. That's definitely right.
So we're coming to sort of our last question here, which it's a really important one, I suppose, for our students and listening, because, again, you're the experts of the industry. If you had some students in front of you who were interested in some of those pathways, the drafting, design, the engineering, science, all that sort of area, what advice would you give them? What would you tell them? Coming from what you know now, where you sit now, what's some advice for them?
I'd say get some work experience so that you can have a look and see what it's like. And you could do work experience in science, architecture, engineering at GHD. We're only one type of provider. You can do all of those things in other businesses as well and learn a completely different part of the discipline. So even if you were to come to GHD and go, actually, I don't think that's what I want to do, that doesn't mean that science or engineering isn't the thing that you want to do, because it's so broad. You could do so many different things. So if you have one poor experience, don't necessarily think that's the be all and end all, and therefore you have to change your mind about what you want to do. Research, learn as much as you can, talk to people who are doing that job, because they will be able to tell you what's good about it and what's not so good about it. And if you still think, actually, that's something I want to do, then it's worth your time learning more about it and continuing that journey.
That's great advice.
Yeah, I would say the same. Absolutely have a go at anything you think you're interested in. Even if you're not sure, have a go at it. There's nothing lost by spending 2 or 3 days or a week somewhere doing some work experience, because you'll either confirm or deny what you thought you knew. So that's easy. And then the second part I would say is reach out wherever possible to any of your peers or alumni or others that have done a similar thing. Like, so if you're in grade 12 now, there's other grade 12s that were here last year that are going down those pathways. It is so easy to get access to those type of people, whether that be through work experience or you just know them from the weekend or the footy team or whatever it is. ask them the question. So just say, what do you like about it? What do you think? And it just helps to build that confidence as to what you might want to do.
I really love it when our guest speakers say the exact things that Josie and I say all the time. And I can really promise, the listeners that we do not prompt, our guests to say, the things that we say. But I suppose what it does is it makes the students understand that we're all coming from a place of knowledge and wisdom, and that's what we're trying to pass on to them. And that's why, what we say is all very similar because, we've learnt it from our own experiences.
I'd also like to add a point about AI. Now, AI is something that we're all learning to deal with, and embrace it. It's coming. You're going to have to use it at some point. So give it a go because it is really helpful. But what I would say if you're applying for a job, don't just take what AI gives you and paste it into an email and send it to an employer. I have noticed over the last few weeks and months that I'm getting more and more emails and applications, resumes from people, and I can tell you can just tell when it has been written by AI. And there's some that I've noticed of recent weeks where they're bolding the certain words that they think we want to see. But when I'm seeing 6 emails that all look almost identical, I'm not actually seeing you. I'm seeing what AI has put together. So I think embrace it, use AI, but personalize it for yourself. Because if you're an employer and you're looking at the same 6 emails that are almost word for word the same, I want to see that little bit of difference. I want to see that person who's actually put some effort into what they're saying, rather than they've just put in a command into Copilot and it spits something out.
It's really, really interesting you say that because obviously from a teaching perspective of a school, we do want to embrace AI. It is part of the world, but, we tell the students all the time it is a tool to support. Yes. It is not where you're no longer thinking or not trying to work some, things out yourself and all of that. But from then when I have my careers hat on, I also too have noticed a little bit of the, cover letters that I'm having a look at or the little blurb about someone at the beginning of their resume. And I'm looking at those words going, you didn't write that because that's how maybe I would, explain something, in all the years of experience I've now got, or I wouldn't even quite even word it that way. And, I say to them, just make it your own because the employer's going to know straight away that is not your words. So all of a sudden, you've created a little barrier there straight off the bat because all of a sudden that person's sitting there going, oh, well, you didn't really even write this, and I'm probably going to much prefer the person who there's some honesty there in their words because I know that's coming directly from them and, as not an AI support.
Absolutely. Think about it that, that employer is sitting there looking at 6 people. So think of it as if you're at the start of a running race. You're all lined up on that start line. And I'm going to look for what's that point of difference, what's going to show me what I'm really want to see in each candidate. And it's not AI is a useful tool. I use it every day, but it is not what I want to read when I have someone's application in front of me.
No, I think that was a really great point to make, and I'm really glad that you made it. And hopefully for the students listening, they can take that on board and learn from that, and make sure that they are personalising everything that they're putting in with those sort of applications and cover letters and resumes, because we can tell and we do know.
And put your best foot forward. Like, use the tools, as I said, but make sure that you have read it and that you are comfortable that that's the position you're putting forward when you're putting yourself forward for a position, for a job.
Thank you both very much for our podcast this afternoon. It has been wonderful. I've really enjoyed talking to you both, learning about you both even more, but just all of those messages for our students, parents and caregivers who are listening as well. I just know that it will be outstanding, I suppose, advice and information for them to move forward with. So Jennifer and Brad, thank you so much for your time today. I understand with every guest speaker we have who comes in, you have very busy lives and you have very busy a very busy work life going on, and we appreciate that you come and give us a little bit of that time, even though I know it's probably quite stressful in coming out of the office to do these things. As I said earlier, GHD Group are a wonderful community partner and supporter of Ryan Catholic College. We cannot thank you enough for all that you do for our students and for us as a college, and we hope to continue this partnership well into the future. So thank you for your time. Thank you for all that you do for us.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you for having
Thanks
us.
for this.